The sandstorm was fierce across the barren alien desert, a storm of red dust that covered everything in silence. A group of alien workers, tall and thin with gray skin and glowing yellow eyes, moved slowly under the storm. They were miners, searching for ancient metals buried deep under the ground. For centuries their people had dug through ruins of forgotten worlds. But today, as their scanners beeped louder than ever before, they knew something strange was waiting beneath the sand. One of the aliens, Kara's, stopped and stared at his scanner. The sound was sharp, constant, not like stone or metal they usually found. This was bigger, older, and strange. His companions gathered around. They spoke in their sharp tongue, but even without words the fear in their eyes was clear. Something powerful was hidden there. Hours passed, and the storm faded. Machines began to dig, throwing sand and stone aside until a dark shape appeared under the ground. Slowly, as the dust cleared, the aliens saw the edges of something vast, something ancient. It was not a temple, not a ruin, not anything their people had built. It was a ship. A massive, broken ship buried under 10,000 years of sand. The aliens stood silent. Even their leader, who never showed fear, could not hide the way his hands trembled. On the side of the ship, though faded and broken, strange symbols were still visible. Symbols none of them understood. But one word, half broken and half buried, was still clear. The word was human. The leader ordered the entrance to be cut open. Sparks flew, metal screamed, and the ancient ship opened like a grave. A long, dark corridor stretched inside. The air was heavy, stale, yet still breathable. The aliens entered, their lights cutting through the dust and shadows. Every step echoed as if the ship itself was remembering the sound of life. Inside, they saw signs of war. Burned walls, shattered weapons, skeletons of soldiers still in their armor. The aliens whispered to each other. These were not their kind. These were humans. The humans who had disappeared from history, the ones their ancestors spoke of only in broken myths. According to old legends, humans were monsters of war, builders of weapons so terrible that even the stars feared them. But those were just stories, told to frighten children. Or so they thought. Karas picked up a rusted weapon from the floor. Even broken, it felt heavy with purpose, dangerous. He imagined what it must have been like 10,000 years ago, when these humans fought, when they built this giant ship. His heart beat faster, not from fear but from something else. Curiosity. Excitement. Deeper inside, the aliens reached a massive hall. At its center stood a chamber of glass, cracked but still intact. Within the chamber lay a figure. Not a skeleton, not dust. A body. Preserved by the ship's systems, sleeping as if time had forgotten it. It was a human. The aliens froze. For a long moment, no one moved. The human's face was calm, but his body was wrapped in armor unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Strange lights pulsed faintly across the armor, as if the ship was still feeding him energy. Karas felt his throat dry. This was no corpse. This was someone waiting. Someone sleeping. Someone who might wake. The leader shouted an order, his voice sharp, but his eyes betrayed fear. He told the others to leave the chamber sealed. But curiosity was stronger than fear. One of the younger aliens stepped forward and touched the controls near the chamber. Lights flickered. The ship groaned, as if waking from a long dream. Warning alarms, old but still alive, echoed through the halls. The glass of the chamber hissed and began to open. The aliens panicked. Some ran back toward the entrance, others shouted in fear. Karas could not move. He watched as the glass lid rose slowly, releasing a breath of air that had been trapped for 10,000 years. The human inside opened his eyes. They were not the eyes of a corpse. They were sharp, alive, burning with something the aliens did not understand. He moved, slow at first, then strong, sitting up as the lights of his armor grew brighter. The aliens stumbled backward. For the first time in their lives, they saw a human not as a myth, not as a skeleton, but alive. The human's voice was deep, rough with age, but clear. He spoke in words the aliens could not understand. But even without knowing the language, the meaning was clear. He was not asking. He was commanding. His hand reached for the weapon by his side, a weapon that had waited 10,000 years to be held again. The aliens trembled. They did not know it yet, but by waking this one man, they had woken a war. A war older than their own people, a war that had never truly ended. And now, it was about to begin again. The chamber was silent except for the steady hum of the human's armor. His eyes scanned the aliens one by one. They felt small under his gaze, like insects caught in the shadow of something far greater. None dared to move. Even the leader, who once shouted orders with confidence, now stood frozen. The human pushed himself to his feet. His movements were heavy, slow, as if his body had not moved in thousands of years. Yet every step carried power, a weight that made the aliens instinctively step back. The sound of his boots striking the metal floor echoed through the hall like thunder. Karas felt his hands trembling. He wanted to run, but his legs refused to obey. Something inside him whispered that running would not matter. This man, this human, was dangerous in a way he could not explain. The human looked down at the weapon lying beside the chamber. It was ancient, covered in dust and rust. Yet as he reached for it, the weapon lit up, glowing with a deep blue light as if it had been waiting for him. The aliens gasped in terror. They had seen energy weapons before, but never one that came alive on its own. The leader finally found his voice. He barked an order, and the younger aliens raised their rifles. Their hands shook, but they aimed at the human. The leader shouted again, telling them to fire. A flash of light filled the hall. The alien rifles released a storm of energy bolts. The sound was deafening. Dust and sparks filled the air. For a moment, the aliens thought it was over. No one could survive such fire. But when the smoke cleared, the human still stood. His armor glowed, a shimmering shield flickering around him. Not a single shot had touched his body. His eyes burned brighter now, filled with something ancient, anger. He raised his weapon. With a single swing, light burst out, a wave of energy slicing through the air. The rifles of the aliens exploded in their hands. Some were thrown to the floor, screaming. Others scrambled back, their courage shattered. The leader shouted again, but his voice was weak now. The human's gaze fell on him, and the leader's words died in his throat. The human stepped closer, towering over him. He spoke again in his old tongue, sharp and commanding. The aliens could not understand the words, but they understood the meaning. It was a warning. The leader dropped to his knees. The human looked around the hall, his face calm but filled with purpose. He moved to the walls, touching strange panels. Lights that had been dead for 10,000 years flickered alive. The ship itself began to awaken. Engines groaned in the distance. Power surged through the corridors. What had been a tomb was now becoming a fortress again. The aliens stared in horror. They realized too late that this was not just a man. This was a soldier of a forgotten war, and his ship was his weapon. Karas felt his chest tighten. He could not look away. He should have been afraid, and he was. But deeper inside, there was something else. Admiration. The humans were not myths. They were real. Stronger than any story had described. And this one man, alone, was enough to terrify his entire crew. The human turned back toward them. He pointed to the exit, his face cold. The meaning was clear: leave. The aliens rushed toward the corridor, tripping over each other in their panic. Only Karas hesitated, glancing back at the man. Their eyes met for a brief second. Karas felt a strange pull, as if the human's gaze was asking a question, or offering a challenge. Then the moment ended, and he ran. Outside, under the fading sun, the aliens gathered, their leader pale and silent. None spoke for a long time. Finally, one of the younger miners whispered what they were all thinking. "He will kill us all." The leader shook his head. His voice was low, heavy with dread. Not us. Not only us. If the legends are true, he will kill everything. His kind never stopped fighting. They only slept. The ground shook beneath their feet. Dust rose as the buried ship lifted, ancient engines roaring back to life. The desert screamed as the giant vessel tore itself free from the sand. The aliens could only watch as the ship rose higher, its massive shadow covering the land. Inside, the human stood at the command deck. His hand moved across the console as if he had never left. Systems lit up one by one. Long-dead weapons came online. The ship groaned with hunger, a beast ready for war. He spoke softly, almost to himself, in a language no alien could understand. But his words carried weight, like a promise. His eyes stared out into the stars. The war of 10,000 years had been silent. Now, it was awake again. The alien desert was quiet again, but the silence felt wrong. High above the sands, the ancient human ship floated like a dark star, its engines burning with new life. The aliens who had discovered it stood far away, watching in fear. None of them spoke. None dared to move closer. Karas kept his eyes fixed on the ship. It was alive in a way no machine should be. He felt the vibrations in his chest, the deep thrum of power that rolled across the desert. His people had built great warships, yes, but nothing like this. This ship was not only a weapon. It was a memory of war itself, carved into steel and fire. Inside the vessel, the human soldier moved slowly across the command deck. Dust fell from the ceiling as systems came back online. He stood in the center of it all, hands brushing across glowing panels. Every touch seemed to wake another part of the ship. Weapons bays unlocked. Shield systems hummed. Long-dead machines obeyed him as if they had only been waiting. He paused, looking at the stars beyond the cracked windows. His eyes narrowed. The galaxy was different now. The constellations had shifted. Worlds he once knew might be gone. Allies, enemies, all turned to dust. 10,000 years had passed, but his purpose had not. In the distance, orbiting the desert world, alien satellites stirred. They had detected the energy burst. Military stations sent warnings. Commanders argued in panic. They had no records of this ship. Their databases held nothing about humans, except for half-forgotten legends. Yet now, one of those legends had risen, and it carried weapons their scanners could barely measure. On the surface, the alien leader gathered his surviving crew. His voice trembled with rage and fear. "We must tell the High Council. They must know what has awoken here. This human, this relic, it cannot be allowed to live." But Karas whispered, "Maybe he is not our enemy. Maybe he fights for something else." The leader struck him across the face. "Fool! Do you not feel it? That man is war. He does not need a reason. His kind destroyed themselves once. They will destroy us too." Karas said nothing, but the thought would not leave him. He had seen the man's eyes. There had been fury, yes, but also something more. A fire of purpose. A soldier's fire. Not the blind madness of a beast. Back inside the ship, the human found the central chamber. He placed his hand on the console, and a deep voice filled the room. It was not his own. It was the ship. System integrity, 20%. Crew status, terminated. Mission status, suspended. The man closed his eyes. Memories returned, broken and heavy. A battle long ago. His people, surrounded. The enemy, endless. This ship, his last command. He had ordered his crew into cryosleep, but something had gone wrong. They were gone. Only he remained. His hand tightened on the weapon at his side. He had failed them. But he was not finished. The ship's AI spoke again. Hostile signals detected. Multiple fleets converging. The human's lips curled into a grim smile. So the galaxy still had enemies. That meant his mission was not over. Far above the desert, alien warships appeared in orbit. They were sleek and modern, carrying weapons far beyond what the miners had. But as their sensors scanned the human vessel, their captains hesitated. The readings were impossible. The power inside that old ship was stronger than anything they knew. Still, orders were orders. The first fleet prepared to fire. The human stood tall, his armor glowing brighter. He raised his weapon in salute to the stars, then turned back to the console. Let them come. The ancient ship shuddered, and its weapons roared to life. Energy cannons, silent for 10 millennia, lit the void with deadly fire. Beams of blue light cut across the black sky, tearing through the alien fleet. One ship after another exploded, fire blooming like flowers in the night. On the ground, Karas and the others watched in awe. The sky itself was burning. Their ships, their strongest defenses, were falling like paper before the human's wrath. The leader dropped to his knees, covering his head. We are doomed. Nothing can stop him. But Karas could not look away. His chest filled with something strange, something he had never felt for his own people. Respect. The battle ended quickly. The alien fleet was gone, broken and scattered. The human ship floated alone, scarred but alive. Inside, the soldier stood in silence, listening to the hum of his vessel. For the first time in ages, he felt alive too. But he knew this was only the beginning. If one fleet had come, others would follow. Armies would rise. The galaxy would not let him exist in peace. They would fear him. They would try to kill him. He looked down at the planet below. Somewhere out there, the aliens who had found him were still alive. He remembered their faces, the fear, the awe. Perhaps they were not enemies. Perhaps they were witnesses. And witnesses, he thought, could become allies. Or they could become the first to fall. The stars waited, silent and endless. The soldier tightened his grip on his weapon. The war of 10,000 years had awoken. And he was ready to fight it once more. The galaxy trembled with whispers. Reports spread from world to world, carried on encrypted signals and fearful voices. An ancient ship had risen from the sands of a forgotten planet. A single human had awakened, and with him came destruction. Fleets that once ruled the skies had been torn apart in minutes. In the grand chambers of the alien High Council, leaders from across the stars gathered. Their voices clashed like thunder, fear hidden behind anger. It cannot be real, one said, his skin shimmering like polished stone. Humans are myths. Myth or not, another hissed, our fleets lie in ruins. Something destroyed them. Something older than us. At the center of the council, the High Speaker raised her hand. Silence fell. Her eyes were sharp, cold. Do not fool yourselves. The legends were true. The humans were monsters of war. We buried their memory because the truth was too dangerous. And now, one of them lives again. A murmur of dread rippled through the chamber. Some demanded immediate war, to send every fleet against the relic. Others whispered caution. If one human alone could shatter fleets, then what would happen if more of them were still hidden, waiting? Meanwhile, on the desert world below, Karas sat apart from the other miners. His body was still bruised from the discovery, his mind restless. The others cursed the day they had dug up the ship. They prayed the council would destroy the human. But Karas could not forget the moment their eyes had met. The human had spared him. Why? At night, he dreamed of the man in armor, standing against a storm of fire. Not a beast, not a monster. A warrior. Perhaps a savior. Above them, the human soldier studied the stars from his command deck. His ship was still repairing itself, but the weapons were alive again, hungry for war. He scrolled through old data, records of battles long lost. His people had fought for survival against countless enemies. And now, he saw no allies left. Only strangers. Only threats. The ship's AI spoke. Signals detected. Multiple fleets converging on this sector. Estimated time, 4 standard cycles. The human's jaw tightened. They were coming for him. He expected nothing less. He was a soldier. Soldiers did not wait for peace. Soldiers prepared. He walked the halls of the ship, past the empty chambers where his crew once slept. He felt the weight of their absence. He was the last. But perhaps he did not need them. He had the ship. He had the mission. He had war itself in his hands. Yet, a thought lingered in his mind. The aliens who had woken him. They had been terrified, yes. But they had also looked at him with something else. Wonder. Maybe the galaxy was not only enemies. Maybe it could be something more. Down on the planet, Karas could no longer stay silent. He left the camp, walking alone across the dunes until he stood beneath the shadow of the rising ship. The air vibrated with energy, the heat of the engines burning against his skin. He raised his hands, showing he carried no weapon. A beam of blue light scanned him from above. For a moment, he thought he would be vaporized. But instead, the ship lowered a ramp. Heart-pounding, Karas stepped inside. The corridors were massive, filled with shadows and humming machines. He felt like an insect inside the body of a god. Yet he walked on, until he reached the command deck. There he saw him. The human. Standing tall, armor glowing, eyes sharp as blades. Karas dropped to one knee, trembling. I do not know your words. But I know your strength. Please, hear me. The human studied him, silent. For a long time, neither moved. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon. He spoke, his voice deep, rough with time. Karas did not understand the language, but he understood the meaning. It was not anger. It was not a threat. It was a question. Karas lifted his head, meeting his gaze. If you are war, then let me learn why. Let me see. The human's eyes narrowed, then softened slightly. He turned to the console, pressing commands. A hologram flickered to life, showing scenes of ancient battles, human fleets burning, alien armadas falling, worlds shattered under fire. Karas gasped. The legends had been true. Humans had fought like demons, never stopping, never surrendering. But as the images continued, he saw something else. Not madness, not destruction for its own sake. He saw defense. Sacrifice. The humans had bled not only for conquest, but to protect themselves, to protect something greater. His chest ached with awe. He whispered, almost to himself, "You are not monsters. You are soldiers." The human's gaze fell on him again. For the first time, there was no anger in his eyes. Only a glimmer of recognition, as if he had found not an enemy, but someone who could understand. But the moment did not last. The ship's AI spoke again. Warning. Enemy fleets entering orbit. The human turned toward the stars, his armor glowing brighter. The war was coming to him again. He would not run. He would never run. Karas stood, his fear fading into resolve. He was only a miner, nothing compared to this warrior. Yet he felt the fire of something new inside him. He would not run either. Together, they faced the stars, where the galaxy's armadas gathered like predators. The human raised his weapon. The war of 10,000 years was no longer a memory. It was here. And this time, he would not fight alone. The stars above the desert world filled with light. Dozens of alien warships emerged from the void, their engines blazing, their weapons armed. The fleets moved in perfect formation, circling the ancient human vessel like wolves around a wounded beast. To them, the human was not a man. He was a threat to the galaxy itself. And threats had to be destroyed. On the ground, miners and soldiers of the alien race watched in terror. The sky was alive with fire, their entire navy gathered to end this single relic of the past. None believed the old ship could survive. None, except Karas. Inside the human's vessel, alarms blared across the command deck. The ship's AI counted the enemy numbers. 237 vessels detected. Estimated survival chance, 3%. The human stood silent, his eyes burning with cold focus. His hand rested on the glowing weapon by his side. 3% meant nothing to him. He had fought with worse odds before. Kara's gripped the railing, fear twisting in his stomach. He was no soldier. He had no weapon, no armor. But he refused to leave. Something in the human's presence gave him strength. Something told him that running would mean more than death, it would mean surrendering hope. The enemy fleet opened fire. A storm of plasma and missiles rained down from orbit. The night sky lit up like 1,000 suns, fire tearing across the darkness. The human raised his hand, pressing a command. The ship's shields flared to life, a shimmering wall of blue energy wrapping the vessel. Explosions shook the air, but the ship held. Dust rained down inside the corridors, but the soldier did not flinch. His voice was calm, commanding. Targeting sequence, the AI replied. Weapons long dead roared awake. Cannons larger than towers unfolded from the ship's hull. Energy cores pulsed with light, hungry after 10,000 years of silence. Then they fired. Beams of pure power lanced through the void, striking the nearest alien ships. Hulls melted, engines exploded, fleets scattered like insects before fire. Dozens were destroyed in the first volley. Kara's gasped, gripping tighter. The scale of destruction was beyond anything he had imagined. This was not a battle. This was a storm. But the enemy was not finished. Their fleets spread wider, surrounding the human vessel. They launched wave after wave of fighters, small and fast, diving through the shields. Swarms of them filled the skies, firing at every angle. The human moved to another console, his armor glowing brighter. With a sharp command, the ship's hangars opened. Drones, ancient, sleek and deadly, swarmed out, glowing with the same blue energy as the ship. They met the enemy fighters head-on, slicing through them with beams of light. Karas staggered, unable to believe his eyes. It is like a god of war, he whispered. The human did not look at him, but his voice came low, steady, almost like an oath. Though Karas did not understand the words, he felt their meaning. The human was not fighting to conquer. He was fighting to endure. To finish a war that time itself had not ended. Hours seemed to pass in moments. Ship after ship fell in flames, debris raining through the skies. Yet for every vessel destroyed, more arrived. Reinforcements from across the galaxy poured into orbit, drawn by fear and command. The human ship was strong, but it was only one. Even gods could be drowned under endless fire. The AI spoke. Shields at 40%. Ammunition cores, unstable. For the first time, Karas saw strain in the soldier's eyes. He was strong, yes, but not invincible. His ship was bleeding. The alien leader, watching from the surface, clenched his fists in triumph. He cannot win. He will drown, and with him, the last shadow of his kind. But Karas shook his head. Deep in his chest, he knew the truth. The human would never surrender. Even if he died, he would make the galaxy remember why humans were feared. The soldier's gaze hardened. He activated something deep within the ship, a system older than the fleets outside, a weapon too terrible to exist. The AI's voice trembled. Warning. Planetary scale armament preparing. Karas staggered back. What are you doing? The soldier looked at him, eyes burning like stars. His voice was low, filled with iron. He spoke words Karas could not understand, but the message was clear. War is survival. The ship's hull split open, revealing a massive cannon, its core glowing brighter than the sun. The fleets panicked, scattering in every direction, but it was too late. The weapon fired. A beam of white fire tore through space, slicing across the battlefield. Hundreds of ships vanished in a single flash, turned to dust and ash. The sky itself seemed to scream. On the ground, the aliens fell to their knees, blinded by the light. Their leader covered his face, muttering in horror. He will burn the galaxy. He will not stop. Kara's trembled, but he did not look away. He watched the human, standing tall in the storm, and felt something shift inside him. Yes, this man was war. Yes, he was destruction. But he was also hope, the kind of hope that only comes when the impossible rises against the endless. The fleets were broken. Survivors fled into the void, their signals screaming warnings across the stars. The human ship floated alone once more, scarred but victorious. Silence returned. But it was not peace. The galaxy now knew the truth. The humans were not gone. And war had awoken again. Across the galaxy, silence did not last long. Survivors of the great battle fled to their homeworlds, carrying stories of fire and terror. They spoke of a single ship, older than empires, commanded by a single human soldier. They told of fleets burned to ash in moments, of weapons beyond reason. World by world, the stories spread. To some, they sounded like nightmares. To others, they were worse. Memories. The elders of ancient races shivered when they heard the word human. They remembered fragments of the old wars, the wars no one wanted to speak of. On a distant council station, thousands of voices argued at once. He must be destroyed at all costs. No, he cannot be fought directly. We must contain him, trap him, bury him again. He is only one man. He cannot fight forever. Fools. One man has already broken fleets that should never fall. And so the galaxy trembled, torn between fear and pride. Armadas gathered in hidden docks. Secret weapons were pulled from vaults long sealed. Every empire, great or small, prepared for the war to come. But not all feared him. Some listened more carefully. Some wondered if the human was not only a danger, but a chance. On the desert world below, Kara sat inside the human ship. Days had passed since the battle. He had not left. He could not. Something tied him to this warrior, this relic of a forgotten age. The human moved through the ship with silent purpose. He spoke little, but slowly Kara began to understand him, not his words, but his meaning. A gesture. A look. The way he touched the walls of the ship like an old soldier touching the graves of fallen brothers. One night, Kara tried to speak. He placed his hand on his chest. Kara, he said, his voice firm. The human paused. His eyes studied him for a long moment. Then he touched his own chest. Marcus. The sound was heavy, sharp, but Kara felt it burn into his memory. Marcus. The name of the last human. After that, their silence was not as heavy. They began to share small words, simple gestures. Kara pointed at the stars and spoke the names of worlds. Marcus repeated them in his strange voice. Marcus, in return, showed Kara's ancient recordings of battles, maps of lost human colonies, names of empires that had turned to dust. Kara learned something important. The humans had not been monsters without cause. They had fought because they were surrounded. Every star had been a battlefield, every world a last stand. They had burned brightly, but too brightly, until even their own flames consumed them. Yet Marcus had survived. And with him, the fire survived too. But outside, danger grew. Drones captured enemy signals every hour. New fleets were massing, larger than before. Marcus studied the data with cold eyes. His ship was strong, but not endless. Repairs were slow. Ammunition cores were unstable. Against what was coming, even he might not hold. Kara saw it too. He stood by Marcus's side, watching the endless streams of hostile signals. His people's leaders would not help. They would join the others, too afraid of the human's power. So Kara did something unthinkable. He turned to Marcus and placed his hand on the console. I will help. Marcus stared at him, his expression unreadable. But after a long moment, he nodded. Together, they worked. Marcus showed him how to stabilize energy cores, how to guide the drones, how to read the ship's strange symbols. Kara struggled, his alien hands clumsy against human design, but he did not give up. And Marcus, though a soldier, showed a patience that surprised him. Through the days, a bond formed. Not words, not trust, not yet. But something close. Two beings from different worlds, standing together against the weight of the galaxy. Then, the AI spoke again. Alert. Massive hostile fleet detected. Size. Beyond measurable range. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He looked at Kara's, and Kara's felt his chest tighten. This was not a simple battle. This was everything. The galaxy was coming. Not one empire, not one fleet. All of them. United by fear. From the command deck, they watched as the stars filled with light. Thousands of ships. Tens of thousands. More than Marcus had ever seen in one place. Kara's whispered, his voice breaking. It is the end. But Marcus's voice was calm, almost cold. He raised his weapon and said words Kara's could not understand. Yet their meaning was clear. No. This is the beginning. The ship's core glowed brighter than ever, the hum of ancient engines shaking the world below. Systems awakened that had slept for millennia. Hidden weapons unfolded from the ship's hull, so vast that even Kara's stared in disbelief. The last human stood tall, ready to meet the galaxy's wrath. And beside him, a single alien miner stood too, his fear turning into fire. The war of 10,000 years had not ended. It had only been waiting. And now, the final storm was about to begin. The stars burned with war. From horizon to horizon, the sky was filled with enemy ships. Thousands, tens of thousands, maybe more. Their lights glittered like a sea of fire, surrounding the ancient human vessel. Every empire had come. Armadas that once hated each other now stood side by side, united by fear of one man. On the desert below, the people of Kara's world trembled. Some prayed, some hid, but all watched. For above them stood the last human, facing the galaxy alone. Inside the ship, Marcus stood at the command deck. His armor glowed with steady light, his weapon humming in his hand. Beside him, Kara's felt his legs weaken, but he did not fall. He had chosen to stand here. If the human faced the storm, then so would he. The AI's voice was calm, though the words carried doom. Hostile numbers, beyond calculation. Survival chance, less than 1%. Marcus only smiled faintly. 1% is enough. The fleets opened fire. The stars exploded with light as waves of plasma, missiles, and energy beams rained down. The shields of the human ship flared, groaning under the endless assault. The vessel shook like a living beast in pain, but it did not break. Marcus raised his hand. Return fire. And the ship answered. Cannons the size of mountains spat fire into the void. Drones swarmed out in glowing waves, cutting through the enemy ranks. Energy beams sliced through cruisers and carriers, shattering their formations. Whole fleets crumbled in minutes, but more filled the gaps. The battle was endless. Every time Marcus struck down 100 ships, 1,000 more pressed forward. His ship burned, its hull cracking, shields failing. But his eyes never wavered. He was a soldier, and soldiers did not break. Kara's worked beside him, his hands trembling as he managed the drones, repaired systems, stabilized the failing cores. Sweat covered his face, fear gnawed at his heart, but still he fought. Hours became a blur of fire and death. Space itself seemed to burn. The galaxy had thrown everything it had, and Marcus had answered with the fury of 10,000 years. But even fury has limits. Warning, the AI said, its voice faint. Core stability, failing. The ship's heart was breaking. The ancient engines could not hold much longer. Marcus knew. His eyes darkened, but his voice was steady. He touched the console, activating the deepest system of the ship, one even Kara's had never seen. A great circle opened in the floor, glowing brighter than the sun. Kara's staggered back. What is this? Marcus looked at him, his gaze sharp but not unkind. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if trying to make Kara's understand. This is the end. And the beginning. Karaz's throat tightened. He understood enough. The human was about to burn everything, to destroy not only the fleets but himself as well. A final sacrifice. The AI confirmed it. Omega weapon, activated. Detonation radius, galaxy scale. Karaz's eyes widened. You will kill them all. You will kill yourself. Marcus stepped closer, placing a heavy hand on Karaz's shoulder. For the first time, his eyes softened. He spoke one word, clear, simple, heavy with meaning. Live. Before Karaz could answer, Marcus pushed him back. A force field rose, locking him away from the central chamber. Karaz pounded the barrier, shouting, begging, but Marcus did not look back. The soldier stood tall, his armor glowing brighter than ever, his weapon raised like a torch. Around him, the ship's core screamed with power. The fleets outside felt it too, the growing heat, the impossible energy. Panic spread. Ships tried to retreat, commanders screamed orders, but it was too late. Marcus spoke to the stars, his voice echoing through the ship. His words were lost to Karaz, but the meaning was clear. I am human. I am war. I do not surrender. And then, the ship exploded. Light swallowed the sky. A wave of pure energy tore across the void, erasing fleets in a single instant. Thousands of ships vanished into fire. The storm spread farther and farther, until even the stars seemed to bend beneath its power. On the desert below, the people fell to their knees as the heavens burned. The sound was like the roar of a dying god. And then, silence. The fleets were gone. The sky was empty. Only drifting ash and broken metal remained. The human ship had vanished with them. Karaz collapsed to his knees, tears burning his eyes. He had seen a man become a legend. He had seen the last human give everything. But as the silence deepened, a faint light blinked on the console before him. The force field lowered, and the AI spoke softly. Transfer complete. Fragment of command uploaded. Karaz froze. The console glowed, showing strange symbols, human code. And among them, one word repeated again and again. Live. Karaz touched the console, and a flood of knowledge poured into him. Commands, systems, memories. A piece of Marcus had survived, his will, his fire, his war. Not in body but in spirit. He was gone, yes. But his legend was not. And Karaz knew, with a trembling heart, that this was not the end. It was the beginning of something greater. The galaxy had tried to erase the humans. Now, it had created a new one. Karaz rose, staring into the empty stars. His voice was quiet, but firm. I will carry it. I will remember. And I will fight. The war of 10,000 years had ended in fire. But from the ashes, the flame still lived. And the galaxy would never forget the name of humanity again.